Welcome, Brandon, to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited and a little nervous, but it'll be fun.
Yeah, don't be nervous. You're surrounded by Christmas sparkle back there. You'll be fine.
That's very true.
So for those who may not know you and your work, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, you'd think I'd be prepared for that question. So the long story short is I have been a special ed teacher for the past 15 years and just quit teaching this last school year, so last May, and moved into writing full-time. That doesn't mean I'm getting paid anything for it yet, which means things are a little scary at the moment. But I've got 5 books published so far with Dream Spinner, and then next year we have 4 slated to come out, so things should start rolling here pretty quickly. So
that's exciting.
Yeah.
And you've got your Christmas story coming up that'll already be out by the time this airs, called Christmas Miracles of a Recently Fallen Spruce, which I think is an awesome title. I haven't gotten the chance to read this yet, so tell us a little bit about it and where the inspiration came from.
Well, this is going to sound a little morbid, but I had never even heard of Dream Spinner's Christmas Advent thing. I guess they deliver one every day for the whole month of December, I think is how it works.
Yeah.
And I was all excited to write this story, and then my dog died. I had 2 dogs die in the past year, and Dolan was my last one, and he died right before I was slated to write this, and I didn't know how in the world I was going to get into the Christmas spirit, because this was in July, and being kind of an emotional basket case. And for some reason, it turned into this kind of sarcastic, snotty, really funny story. Which isn't typically the way I write. Most of the time I kind of pull on heartstrings and make everything kind of angsty. So I have no idea why my psyche went, let's make this funny. But it's definitely the funniest story I've ever written. It's just about a guy who, well, let me back up. My favorite night typically of the Christmas season is I have a gay boy Christmas dinner, and all my best gay guys come over and I cook and we exchange dirty or tacky presents, that kind of thing. So the character in the story does that, but he's way type A. And so after he's done preparing on Christmas Eve, he goes and takes his annual snowshoe hike to kind of just, let it all go and get ready for the party the next day. While he's doing that, this guy zooming on a snowmobile almost runs over him and ends up smashing into a recently fallen spruce. So it's about their night together out in the snow with broken snowshoes and snowmobile, and his type A weirdness coming out. So there was a really long explanation of that little bitty short story. I think it was longer than the story it is itself.
I'm looking forward to reading that. I start getting the story is December 1st, so they'll be clicking into my email box one a day. So it's a lot of fun. If you're not getting the whole package, I highly recommend it.
No, I bought the whole package. I'm really looking forward to it too.
So we'll be reading it about the same time then.
I guess we will. Yeah.
So what would you say the trademark of a Brandon Witt story is? You mentioned pulling on the heartstrings a little bit.
I think that's one of them. Kind of sounds like I'm tooting my own horn here, and I don't mean it that way, but I really try to make my characters as real to life as possible. And probably not everyone feels that way just because they're true to my life, but hopefully that comes across. There's always quite a bit of angst, and 99% of the time there's a happy ending. I've only done one without one, and I think I learned my lesson from that. I got crucified. So the ones coming out next year all have happy endings. But I think just the reality of the stories. There's a little fantasy of romance in there as well, but I think that's my trademark, probably. I think you can see people in most of my characters.
Yeah, I felt that way with the one that I just read. I just finished "Then the Stars Fall," the audiobook, a couple days ago, and it really rang true across the board, I thought.
Thanks.
When you're writing, are you typically plotting or pantsing or some combo, or what's your typical method?
I'm a little type A as well, like that other character. So I tend to map out not overly detailed, but a pretty detailed outline and pages upon pages about each character, about their families, about people that impacted them, even if they don't show up in the story. Like by the time I sit down to write, I know my characters pretty much inside and out, and have the loose outline to go by. But sometimes, as all writers say, they kind of surprise me and do their own thing every once in a while, which is always my favorite part. But I'm more of a planner.
Yeah, I kind of thought so, just by how complex some of how complex some of Stars was. It was so between going back and forth between Travis and Wesley, and including POV from some of the supporting characters, and just taking such a long arc, because that book went on for maybe a year, I think, or close to it.
It probably felt like it, yeah.
No.
No, I think the timeline is about a year, which is weird because almost all my stories are about a year. I don't know why I think in that time frame, but I've noticed that in the 3 I've written and the other one I'm starting now, that almost all of them are about 9 months to a year. I don't know what that is.
So your dogs are immortalized in that book, at least by name. Were those accurate descriptions of Duncan and Dolan?
Yeah, they. That's exactly who they were. And I knew I was going to write that book before I had any plot or knew what was happening. I knew it was going to be about them. And then the family of kids that is based off a family at church that I was going to at the time, those kind of showed up later. But it was all going to be about Duncan and Dolan. So that was a real blessing to get that finished, because I lost both of the boys after that. So I'm really glad immortalized was a good word. So I'm glad that's there. I feel like people that like the book have gotten to know my dogs. That's kind of nice.
Even more so now that I actually know that, because I found that in your bio, I think on Amazon, that those were your dogs. And so I'm like, wow, if they're really like that, that's pretty awesome.
No, they really were. Duncan was always serious and right by my side, and Dolan was sweet and about the dumbest thing you ever saw. Literally, we would go on walks and he would be so excited just to be walking. He'd be staring back at me the whole time and would run into walls. That happened many times. So wow. Actually, a lot of the animals in that story were true, because I grew up in Missouri where that story is based. So like the buffalo were my grandpa's buffalo. His favorite one was named Jared. I had chickens and cows. So I don't think there was a fake animal in that book. So
that's pretty cool. And I liked your inclusion of religion, because that doesn't happen in, I think, the way that you presented it in too much of our fiction. It's always the church is bad. And here you presented a church that kind of split the difference between, depending on who was preaching at the time.
Yeah. That is definitely not true to life from where where that book is set. The first book that I based there was definitely true to life, because the church was very much the antagonist, or the conflict setter of the first story. And this one, I felt like I needed to lighten that up a little bit, and so kind of based it more off of gay-friendly churches here in Denver. But so there was a little fiction there for sure.
So Dream Spinners ventured out with you this year with a couple of audiobooks, with Stars, and then Shattered Door also. How's the experience for you going from the written word into having someone perform your work?
That was a huge dream of mine, and it was something I begged my publisher for, because I'm not a big seller. I haven't sold very many books, and I don't know quite how it all works, but you have to hit some magic number before it really pays to have an audiobook made. So the reader, and I'm nervous and can't think of, Andy McFerrin, who is fantastic, was willing to split profits with me instead of getting paid. So he's really the only reason either one of them were turned into audiobooks. But I couldn't believe, one, that he was willing to do that, and two, that he fell in my lap, because he is better than I ever dreamed a reader could be for those books. And I listen to audiobooks more than I do actually reading them anymore. So I loved it. It was truly, truly magical.
I really enjoyed Stars. He did a great job
He
capturing everybody. I mean, it was so good.
Yeah, all the stories he had done before that were zombie stories, I believe. So I wasn't sure if he was. I was like, huh, I don't know how you're gonna pull this off. No one's eating anybody, but he did
That's
fantastic.
that's quite the jump from zombie stories to that.
He's done a few others, but most of them are a zombie series. So he's
Hey, you
good.
mentioned 2016 a little bit, and you've got 4 coming out, and I saw on your site that you've got, it looks like 3 coming out just in the first half of the year alone. Tell us a little bit about what we've got to expect.
Well, in January, you've got, I even wrote them down because I knew you were going to ask and I'd forget the names. The Imperfection of Swans, which a lot of people have seen the cover for already because it was a picture of my best friend that I took a few years ago. And in real life, he's a very high power corporate kind of personality, but also has struggled with an eating disorder while dreaming of opening a bridal shop, believe it or not. So he gave me permission to use all of those real life details and then kind of just go fiction the rest of the way. So it's about this man opening his bridal shop, falling in love. It all happens in Boston. And then at the same time coming to terms with an eating disorder. And despite how angsty that sounds, there's quite a bit of hope and humor in that story. And then March or April, I think, Under a Sky of Ash comes out, and I have yet to figure out how to describe that book without giving it all away. So I'm not really sure how I'm going to ask people to buy it and not be able to tell them anything. But there's several twists in that story. It's the only book I've written so far that the whole time I wrote it, I was like, I'm really loving this. Like, I'm confident in this, which could be the kiss of death. I don't know. Everything else I've ever written, I've gone, oh, this is shit the entire time. So I'm excited to see how people respond to that one. And then right now I'm working on The Son of Money, which is about a really rich character, or the son of a rich family who, this is going to sound cliche, but kind of rejects the whole family and turns to a form of prostitution. And then all of that comes to light and lots of family drama ensues. And I really wanted to take a look at sexuality and slut shaming, basically, just because even in our genre, I think sometimes that gets a bad rap. So there we go. That's what's coming so far. And then a new series is starting by the end of the year. So.
Is there going to be any more Men of Myth?
I'm dying to write more Men of Myth. I have up to 7 of them planned out, but I'm planning on it going to 12. But unfortunately, gay fantasy isn't paying any bills at all. So those are all on hold until I'm assured that I can eat. And then I plan on writing those and mixing those in with the contemporary romance. But I'm dying to get back to that because that's kind of that's my baby, is the fantasy. Most of everything I listen to and read is fantasy. So.
Okay. We got to get people to start paying your bills then.
So yeah,
we can get back to those. So you mentioned previously that you have, shifted over to being full-time writer now. How's that going?
It's amazing. Like, I wondered if I would be bored out of my head when I wasn't leaving the house, or if I could really make myself sit down and write for that many hours a day. And it has been everything I hoped it would be. Like, I've been pleasantly shocked. The only drawback is the absolute terror of it all. I wake up at 4 a.m. sometimes just panicked about how this is going to work. Not that it's the end of the world if I have to go back to a 9-to-5, but I'm hoping not. It's also added a lot more pressure during the writing, which I, for some reason, didn't expect, although I should have. Knowing that not only do people need to like your books, but they need to sell, is a whole nother kind of pressure in the back of your mind as you're trying to write and be true to the creative process instead of giving into that terror. So that's the only drawback, and it's small in comparison to how great it's been.
What's your typical writing day like?
I wake up at 7:15 every day, which is sleeping in hugely compared to the 5:30 I would get up for teaching. I make breakfast and then do a 3 to 4 hour writing session, leave and go to the gym or take a walk or something for an hour or two, and then come back and do another 3 or 4 hour writing session. And then in the evenings do stuff like this, or try to do some marketing things or that kind of stuff. So, and that's each day, every day, except for Fridays. I take Friday off to be with my nephew.
Nice.
So,
Sounds
yeah,
like a great day. I aspire to that someday.
it's a pretty marvelous day. I'm not gonna lie, I love it.
So it's very appropriate you're sitting in front of all the Christmas decor because I know the hashtag blame Brandon cropped up earlier because you did decorate around October 24th. What gets you so into the Christmas spirit so early?
Well, the Blame Brandon was thanks to Poppy. She's a Christmas fiend too, and I don't know where she came up with that, but I liked it. Um, Without getting too heady, I think Christmas was one of the few times where, as a kid, I was just happy all the time. I didn't let a lot of the religious pressure and all that stuff, even as a little kid, that kind of weighed me down. But for some reason at Christmas, with how much my dad decorated, he would put up 3 or 4 trees in the house, and I don't know, everybody was just happier. It was prettier. I liked the presents for sure, but it was always more about the tree and the family and the lights and all of that, which is strange considering how religious my family was. It should have probably been more pressure in that way, but it wasn't. So um, it's just really soothing and happy to me now. So I put it up early because I like it, and like it's a lot of work. That thing took 5 or 6 hours, and if I'm going to work that long on something, I think we were talking about that earlier. I'm going to enjoy it for a while.
Yeah,
So
that's exactly our idea here too. Although we didn't go quite that early, we only did ours the weekend before Thanksgiving. Maybe we'll follow in your footsteps next year, though.
you should join the crazy train.
That's right.
Right.
So you've got a new character you've been talking about coming to the Witty Hour. Tell us a little bit about her and what this show's actually about.
Well, I'll answer those backwards. Well, sort of. You can't really answer what it's about because hell if I know. I started filming this little show called The Witty Hour about 2 years ago, probably, and I was still teaching. And I'm not one of those writers that can just sit down and write anywhere, anytime. I'm very routine, and for me to be able to function and be creative, I have to be in that routine, and that just wasn't able to happen very much when I was teaching so much. So I think The Witty Hour was just my way of doing little small parts of getting creativity out. So there's me on there, of course, but then I do a couple characters of, one of them's this British asshole kind of character who reads my bad reviews from Goodreads or Amazon and makes fun of makes fun of me, actually. He always agrees with the bad reviewers. And that was just partly also a way for me to deal with bad reviews because they would really affect me, but if I made them stupid and this British guy calling me an asshole, it was kind of funny. And then I've got 2 drag characters, Judith, who's this religious nut, right-wing kind of thing, probably dealing with some of my own past there. This hippie character girl, and then this new one coming out in January. I haven't named her yet, but I'm hoping to pull in other authors and do kind of like what we're doing now, except this girl will be interviewing them and kind of just make it this funny, stupid thing. So I always say on the show, I don't understand why anyone watches it because it's kind of funny and kind of just sad to see a grown man doing all of this stuff, but I enjoy it. So
I know I went with the funny aspect of it myself when I checked it out. Let us know when that comes out. We'll definitely hype that when it shows up on the podcast.
Thanks, I will.
Does it come out on any particular schedule, or does it just come out when you're moved to record?
Well, now that I'm writing full time, I do 1 episode in between each book that I write. But I'm changing that in January too, because right now each episode is like 8 to 15 minutes. So I'm thinking I'm going to just do little vignettes. So like, let's say we'll do Artie one day and it's a 3 or 4 minute video. And then the next week or 2, you'll see the interview girl or something like that. A bunch of smaller segments. For one, who sits down and watches a 15-minute show on YouTube? Not too many people. So I think it might reach a broader audience too in smaller sections. So it's all about to change come January.
Awesome. It's a relaunch. Witty Hour 2.0.
Exactly. Take two.
So what's something that you could tell us about yourself that readers don't know?
That is probably hard to come up with because I tend to overshare every single thing on Facebook. It's kind of vile how much I view out there. Something they don't know. I think, speaking of Facebook, I took a Facebook quiz or whatever today. How bitchy are you? Yeah, and I got 100% bitchy, which a couple of readers then posted, no, you're not. You're totally sweet and lovely, and that's because they've met me at GRL, and I'm definitely a Gemini. I have the very sweet side to me, and then I'm 100% bitch other times. So maybe that part that I'm a little bit... why do I want to share that I'm a horrible, bitchy person? But I guess that's it. Surprise.
I was surprised when I saw that. I'm like, that's not who I sat next to for 3 hours.
I think only in rare occasions. I pick my battles.
It's only in moderation.
But when I do, they're there.
So we've got a feature on the podcast where we ask question of the week. And so you get to answer this week's question, which is, what's the first gay novel or gay romance that you read? And what did it mean to you?
That is so easy. I had read a whole bunch of gay novels before the one I'm getting ready to talk about, and every single one of them, every one ended with suicide, HIV, or both, which is part of the reason I'd always wanted to be a writer, but I wanted specifically to do gay books, not just because I was gay, but because of that. It was horrible. The first book that I read that wasn't that was Eric Arvin, Woke Up in a Strange Place. I don't know if you've read that one, but if not, you should. I love all of his stuff, but it's my favorite of his. It was the first one I read where it was beautiful. The characters weren't sad or evil. There was death in it, but it was all about this journey through a heaven-like place. And it was just lovely, absolutely lovely. And it made me contact Eric and just say, I loved your book. Thank you for writing it. And Eric, being Eric, who I didn't even know at the time, wrote back a couple different times and was really sweet, encouraging, asked questions, and realized that I was also an author. But I hadn't been published. I'd been trying to get published for over 7 years at that point. And he recommended Dream Spinner, who I hadn't heard of. And so I always credit him with the reason I'm published, but it was because of that book. So I'm glad you asked that question.
Nice. That's a good answer.
If the listeners haven't read that, they should skip mine for the minute and get that one. It's wonderful.
I got to pick that one up too, because I haven't read that either.
It's fantastic.
So now you get to give a question that we'll use for next week.
Oh.
So what's the most curious thing you want to ask, like listeners to the podcast? What comes to mind?
Am I asking a listener or asking another author?
It could be either, because I mean we build this for authors and readers. So you could ask it specifically from a reader point of view or an author point of view. We'll see what people come back with. Okay.
I think I'm going to make it a little self-serving.
What's your favorite Brendan Witt book?
Well, not that self-serving. Then there'd be no question about how much of a bitch I am. There's so many subgenres already in the MM world, but what's a story that you want to read that you haven't heard yet, either through this really weird character or a completely different setting that no one's thought of? So that's my question. What's the new thing that you're looking for that you haven't been satiated with yet, maybe? However you want. I'll trust you, Jeff.
That's interesting. And we'll see if it comes to be something besides Shifters and Paranormal, maybe. What comes after that?
What comes after? Right. I mean, surely someone out there is like, why hasn't someone written this book? Well, what's that book?
Yeah. Then we'll all scramble over it trying to get it written.
Exactly. Really find out who the bitches are.
So what's the best way with people to connect with you?
Facebook, easily. I don't understand Twitter very much. So probably Facebook, and I also have an email account on my website. or that links to my Gmail. So that's pretty easy too. I know Facebook sometimes goes to that other folder, which I forget about.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I hear they're getting rid of that soon.
If you on your author page, I don't know if it goes to that. I think that's safe. So
Okay. We'll link up to all this stuff in the show notes for episode 10. Is there anything else you want to tell people?
I don't think so. I think you covered a lot. That was pretty impressive, kind of a whirlwind. So, but I appreciate you asking me on here, and anybody that was listening. Hopefully everybody has a good Christmas. You should put it up earlier next year. So, yeah.
We'll see who goes first next year. If it'll be us or you or who knows, someone that you've inspired this year to do it back there in October.
We'll see. Maybe around 4th of July, someone will start putting it up.
Oh my goodness. That would be way too early because it's way too warm at that point.
That is true. I won't disagree with you there. No.
All right. Well, Brandon, thanks so much for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jeff. I greatly appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.